Welcome to Unlock the Code, the ultimate autism podcast. We help you unlock the mysteries of autism so your child can be successful in all areas of his life. With your host, the internationally acclaimed author, speaker, and autism and behavior expert, the CEO of Hope Education Services, Jessica Leichtweisz.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Unlock the Code, the ultimate autism podcast. My name is Jessica Leichtweisz, and I am your host. I have a special guest on tonight, and I am so excited about this show. So many of you do not know that I spent the majority of my adult life living in New York City, and a big part of what my everyday routine was to eat out. Now, I personally love food. I consider myself a total foodie. I think my favorite part about traveling and living in New York was experiencing restaurants and getting to have different types of food, and it's something that I was so passionate about. And it's something that I know when I have a family one day, I want to be able to share and enjoy with them. But I also know that many times when a family has a diagnosis of autism with one of their kids, that they don't necessarily have that same pleasure from being able to eat out, that rather than becoming a fun family experience where people can get together and break bread and enjoy a meal and enjoy that experience, it becomes something filled with anxiety of, what if my child's going to eat something on the menu, or what happens if parents around us or people around us, families around us are looking and my child's making noise. And rather than becoming a fun family experience, it can be a really, really stressful experience. And as someone who works with families affected by autism, I've gone many, many times into restaurants with kids that have autism, working with them on how to be successful, how to eat nicely, how to manage their behavior. See in the families that they're doing that, they don't get that same pleasure that I get to have when I go to restaurants with my friends or with my family. And so I was so excited to hear about Autism Eats. This was an incredible, incredible organization, and I have so much respect for this. So the person we have on the podcast tonight, he's a father, and his son Aiden was diagnosed with autism. His family also, they're from Boston, so Boston's very similar to New York. Lots of restaurants. It's a big part of the culture. Family goes out. They enjoy meals together. And when his son was diagnosed, this is something that his family could really no longer do. And rather than just accepting that and rather just saying, okay, well, we'll just eat at home and this doesn't have to be part of our culture anymore, he created this amazing organization where his son could come and really enjoy a meal. But not only that, but all families that have kids with autism can come and enjoy a meal in a way that was safe and respectful and sensory friendly for all of the kids, and really just a place where parents can just go without worrying, without stressful, knowing their kids are going to be taken care of and appreciated and accepted. And as soon as I heard his story and saw videos about what he's doing, I knew I had to have him on our podcast tonight to come to share a little bit about his story, about why he does what he did, and really as a family how you can enjoy going out to restaurants again with your family. So Lenard Zohn, it's a privilege and pleasure to welcome you onto our podcast today.
Well, thank you very much, Jessica. It's very exciting to be here tonight, and I appreciate you having me on the show. And I'd love to give your listeners an overview of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and share some information about how they can get involved.
Yeah, I gave them a little bit of a background about what your story is, but obviously you can tell much better than I can about what prompted you to start this organization, and a little bit about your family's experience about getting that diagnosis, why you decided to do this program.
Of course. I grew up in a family where love was represented by food. I say that all of the best times that we had as a family growing up were really spent around the dinner table. The day was done, school was over, parents home from work, and now it was just the time to eat and talk, and two brothers, so make fun of each other a little bit also. And when I became married and started building a family of my own, I thought that these dinner table traditions would continue, either in the kitchen or out at restaurants, because, we spent a lot of time going to restaurants as well. And, as a young family, it's a very easy activity to, on a Saturday night or Friday night, to go out with another family or some friends and have a bite to eat. Unfortunately, my son Aiden did not agree with that. And going to a restaurant and that experience really brought out a lot of his adverse behaviors, feelings of being overwhelmed, not being able to wait for a table, the bright lights of a restaurant impacting his sensory sensitivity, nothing on the menu for him to eat. And being a pizza fan, if we went into a restaurant and they didn't have pizza, that would present a major problem, and something we couldn't explain to him. We're in a Chinese restaurant tonight, Aiden. They don't have pizza on the menu. And what that would do was cause Aiden to really not have a good time. He might flop on the floor and start crying, bolt for the door, not be able to sit still, play the music on his iPad too loudly, and more often than not, we would leave that restaurant many times without eating, and certainly most times just feeling pretty depressed and dejected. And, we got to a point where any enjoyment we had from going out to dinner was outweighed by the stress. Who really wants to go through that type of an ordeal? And not to mention the restaurant really never knowing the best way to help, and other diners looking over in our direction. It just didn't make for a good night out. So we stopped going out. We really didn't go out in the community for meals that often, and we didn't get to see our friends as often and family as often as we like to. And it wasn't a good feeling. We were off the roster. We were, not able to do the things that we always expected we would be able to do prior to Aiden receiving his diagnosis. And it got to the point where we said, enough feeling sorry. We know exactly what doesn't work with this typical restaurant outing, and we're certainly not the only autism family out there that's facing this and wants a desire for community and go out there and do the typical enjoyable and what should be simple things. So we came up with the model of Autism Eats to ensure that all autism families and their friends and their extended family could go out for restaurant outings and do so in a way where the entire family was going to have a successful night out.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, Leonard, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the 5 love languages by Gary Chapman. He talks about there being 5 different ways that people experience love. I actually am a big believer there's 6 love languages, and that food is one of those love languages. And it's one of the most amazing ways for friends and families to come together and just have that incredible experience, and to not have that, not be able to have that, and to feel like you're being judged and ostracized by the community. If you have a family with autism, it compounds an even more difficult situation. So, it's incredible. Part of the reason why I started my company, and Leonard, we talked about this a little bit before the show started, is, I'm a big believer that when people find out there's a problem, they can really do 3 things about it. They can either complain, they can do nothing, or they can be the solution to the problem. For me, in my company, I realized that there's parents all around the world that don't have access to ways to help their children. And so I said, okay, I'm going to be the solution for that. I'm going to provide this free training for families. And, you have done the same thing, and that's why I love your story that you said, okay, I'm going to be the solution for families. They can enjoy a meal together. And your reasons for doing it, obviously, they're deeply personal, like you said, but, the numbers of autism, and we spoke about this, it's 1 in 59 now in the United States. So there are so many families that are going through this, and it's incredible that you've created this for them so that they can have and enjoy the same things that you and your family are now able to enjoy. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what Autism Eats is, some of the things that you're doing, and and really how it's affecting families in your area?
Sure. So the way we do it is, I took a sheet of paper, and on one side of the paper, I made a list of all the things that don't work for an autism family in a typical restaurant experience. And on the other side of that sheet of paper, I wrote down all of the solutions. It was basically doing the opposite. So what we did is come up with this very specific and detailed model, and a lot of it makes perfect sense to an autism family. And I'll give you some examples. One of the biggest problems for an autism family is waiting. And actually for any family, a lot of us don't like to wait when we're going out to dinner. But for an autism family, you might not be able to explain to your child why it's going to take 15 minutes, a half hour, 40 minutes, whatever it might be to sit down at a table. So we take the waiting out of the equation. We have a reserved section of the restaurant, which is all ours. Depending on the size of the crowd that we're planning for, we might have an entire restaurant, we might have a function room in the restaurant, or we might have a section of the restaurant. And we set it up for a defined period of time. Typically it's 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. for dinner. And when the guests arrive, they're greeted at the door. They're escorted over to our section of the restaurant. There's no wait. We have, some of the individuals might have sensory sensitivity. So we adjust the lights and we adjust the music down somewhat so that the fluorescent lights don't cause a reaction to some of the individuals. We have all of our guests pay in advance for their meals online at the autismeats.org website. So there's no waiting now for a server to come over. There's no waiting for a check. It's all been paid for. It's one price that includes food, tax, tip, beverages, dessert, and so on. Everything is served buffet style, so that there is no waiting for a menu to come over. There's no getting nervous or overwhelmed if you can't make a decision on what you'd like to eat while the server's there waiting to take your order. The food is ready at the start of our event, and it's served continuously on that buffet until the end of the event. So if somebody's arriving on time and somebody's arriving a little late, or somebody wants to leave early, again, there's absolutely no problem with that. We take all of that stress away. We greet our families at the door. We want them to know that you've made the right decision. We're happy you came out tonight. Come back here, meet some new people. You can sit at a table by yourselves and enjoy family time. We'll put you at a group table and let you meet some new people that you haven't met before. And we let the evening unfold. All behaviors are welcome. And it's an opportunity for the kids to be who they are. Parents don't have to apologize. Nobody has to make excuses or explain anything. And we see families that do, in fact, talk about the autism because it's a shared experience. It's a shared thing that we're going through. And we see others that say, you know what, let's put that on the shelf for the next hour or two. We all know why we're here, so let's talk about things other than that. Let's talk about sports or politics or whatever things are of interest that they want to share. And it turns out to be just a wonderful experience. Families are very comfortable. Siblings find out that they're not the only one with a quirky brother or sister, and they feel good in that environment. I'm the father of a young teenage girl, and it's nice for her to develop a peer group of autism siblings and have them as friends that kind of understand what it's like to be a sibling. And parents as well, talking with other parents that are kind of, again, experiencing these same things. We've had, just give you a sense of the numbers, Jessica, we've had just over 100 events in 20 different states. And we are actively increasing the frequency of our events and adding new states and adding new communities to the program.
That's incredible. I actually, when I invited you on this call, I thought you were actually just a local program. I didn't realize that you were in so many different states. That's incredible. How can parents find out whether or not there's an event going on in their state that they can be part of? Because I can only imagine, that this is something families will all want. Everyone on this podcast listening will want to get to one of these events.
Great, and I hope they do. We post all of our events on the autismeats.org website. And if there's not an event coming up in your particular community and you'd like to have an Autism Eats event or start an Autism Eats chapter in your community, there's a Contact Us button on the website. Please click on the button, put in your information. I'll call you up, and we will have a conversation about starting Autism Eats together. And I do a lot of the heavy lifting and assist with showing you how to find the correct restaurant, how to choose the right menus, set up the room, welcome the guests, really all the information from start to finish. And you become the face of Autism Eats in your community. And we work together to get the word out and do the marketing and start bringing the families in and building it up. And I'll tell you, it's a lot of fun. It's a great way to meet people. It's a great way to enjoy some social time and some respite time. And, we have families that bring their ABA providers as a thank you for all the help that they've done, or a thank you to the teachers for being so caring to their kids. And, sometimes we'll even bring in some entertainment. We did a big event with the Boston Red Sox, and the mascot, Wally, came in, a big furry green monster, and started taking pictures and signing autographs, and we can do some fun things around there too. We've got lots of ideas, and we're always open to more ideas, and we want to keep building Autism Eats. So I encourage all of you to reach out to me, and we'll start doing some things together.
Yeah, that's incredible, and it's the fact that you allow parents to be able to create their own chapter and to really bring it into their community. I know this is something I would love to chat with you after this is done about starting an event here in New Jersey where I live, and maybe we can even get that started together and do an event. I would love to help host an event here. One of the questions that I have for you, and I can also share from my personal experience, some of my tips as well, but as someone who is a parent of a child affected by autism, when families are going out for dinners, what are some of the strategies they can use? Let's say they're not at one of these Autism Eats events, that they're just going out to dinner at a local pizzeria or a local restaurant. What are some things parents can do ahead of time to help their children be really successful? And I'll also share some of the strategies that I recommend. But I would love, from your perspective as a parent, what's worked for your family in making sure, if you were to go out with Aiden, what can you do? And if parents are just, let's say they're just traveling and they have a 5-hour car ride and they have to stop somewhere for lunch, and it's not one of these events, but they just have to eat somewhere out. What are some things they can do to help their children be really successful and help their restaurant be prepared to help their child?
Sure, and those are great questions. I look at this two different ways. I guess one is the planned restaurant outing, and the other is the spontaneous restaurant outing. So if we start with the easier one, which is planned, I try not to leave much to chance. So I look at this as tonight is not the night that we're going to try the brand new restaurant that just opened up in town, where we don't know much about it. So I'm going to look for a restaurant that's been there for a while, and a place that I've been to alone or with my wife or friends or business colleagues. And I'll go into that restaurant and I'll take a look around and make sure that it has the right environment for my family. And what I mean by that is, are we going to be able to sit in a table that might be somewhat secluded if that's what works better? Is it a place that's not going to be showing, the game that night and it's going to have a very loud crowd if that's going to impact my son? So I take those factors into account, make sure that particular restaurant is going to work for us. And then I'll also talk with the manager, and I'll tell them, I'm planning on coming in, whatever the day and the time is. My son does have autism. I'd like to make you aware of that and make sure that the server that we're going to have that night is aware of it as well. And we might want to place our orders very quickly. We might not want to have, some downtime in between, drinks, appetizers, and the main course. It'll be fine for you just to bring everything out. He might have, there might be some food items that we're going to be bringing in Tupperware or in plastic bags or snacks for him to eat. I want to make you aware of that as well. And when you're speaking with the manager of the restaurant, if they're nodding their head and saying, yes, we'd love to have your family in here, we'll make it successful, make it work, you're in the right restaurant, and you've got a very high chance of success that you're going to have a good time that night. If you get some blank stares, and these usually don't come by way of somebody being callous, but more that they're not aware, that they don't have the education of what an autism family might need or what they're experiencing, it might not be the right restaurant for you to go to on this outing. The other thing I suggest is we always bring a bag of Aiden's favorite things. So we're going to do that on our planned outing, or as you mentioned, Jessica, let's say you're on a road trip somewhere for a few hours and are going to pull into a place where you've never been to before. In our Aiden restaurant bag, we keep Aiden's favorite DVDs that he likes. He likes the cases, the tactile sense of opening and closing cases and looking at them. So we always have a bunch of his DVDs. We have our charger cords for his iPhone or his iPad. We have a couple of books. We have goldfish, crackers, and we have green apples. So that's going with us to every restaurant we go to. In fact, that's going in the car with us every time we get in the car. So those are things that will keep Aiden occupied so that he can, focus on that, have some things he's comfortable with, have some things he's used to, so that even if he's not in his favorite restaurant, he certainly has, a high likelihood of doing well because he does have these things that are favorable and that he's comfortable with.
Yeah, those are awesome tips, Leonard. And there's only a few things I would even add to that when I work with some of the families I work with. And one is, and I think you alluded to this in saying Autism Eats uses mostly buffets, but kids are typically more successful at buffets. We know that many times children with autism, they have food selectivity issues. So they might love pizza at their pizza restaurant by their house, but the cheese is different at the pizza restaurant that you're stopping at when you're having a road trip. So going to buffet just presents them with more food options. And on that note, and this is really going back to what you're talking about, being those planned trips, one of the things I always tell families is, if you're going to go out to a restaurant in your community, let's say it's going to be, you have 3 kids and one of them has autism and the other 2 siblings don't, and you're going out for one of those other kids' birthdays, right, the siblings' birthdays, go and get takeout from those restaurants and make sure your child is aware of what the food's going to be and have them practice eating it at home first. I found that really helps children be successful. And, Leonard, you talked about how children, you talked about going into the restaurant and telling them you want to order quickly. I've also found many establishments are really responsive to putting the order in ahead of time, so that by the time you get there, almost every restaurant right on the planet now has their menu online, that they can go in and they can, you can order ahead of time and say, look, this is what we're going to eat, and my son has autism, and so that way you tell them we're going to get there at 7 o'clock, and then when you get there, they already know what you want, and the food is already waiting for you, so it can be a much more easy process. And a lot of families I've worked with have done that and really found that they were much more successful with that. And so I don't know, how you feel about those things? Have you ever tried any of those things, or what is your take on that?
I think those are great ideas. No, I haven't tried them, but I certainly am going to try them because they make perfect sense. Awesome. I especially like the ideas of bringing in some food and trying out the food, so that's not a surprise before we get to the actual restaurant. And I think Aiden would do very well with that.
Yeah, I found that sometimes you have to practice 3 or 4 different foods, but if you find a food your child already knows they're comfortable eating, you're much more likely they're going to have a good experience.
Yeah, we have Aiden's favorite food, as I mentioned, is pizza, but it can be even more narrow than that. Newman's Own Supreme Pizza for the frozen pizza at home is the number 1 favorite, and there could be trouble when we try to give him something different. And second, when we go out for pizza, he's got 2 places or so that are really absolute favorites, and I can be guaranteed he'll eat their pizza. But if we go to another pizza parlor and the pizza might look a little bit different, the shape might be a little bit different, or they cook it a little longer or a little less, that can present a problem right off the bat, and he's not going to be happy with it.
Right, and we know that just like for children with autism, change is really difficult. So doing anything you can do to minimize change is really, really helpful. So I just love, again, what you're doing with families, and I just want to thank you for what you're doing for families affected by autism. I'm definitely going to make all the families I work with aware of your organization and share this podcast with them so that they can get involved and get to the events.
Excellent. I really appreciate that, and thank you for having me on your show. And please send the podcast to me too, and we'll put that up on the Autism Eats website to help share the good work that you're doing, Jessica.
Absolutely, we definitely will. So if you are listening to this podcast, maybe you found it by accident on the internet. Again, my name is Jessica Leichtweisz. I'm passionate about helping families with autism. You can go access my YouTube videos, and this will be on there as well at parenttrainingvideos.com. I have over 80 videos on there to help families. And if you want to look for more podcast episodes, you can do so at unlockthecode.info. Again, thank you, Lenard, so much for coming onto the show. It was a privilege to have you. I really look forward to being in touch again and getting involved with Autism Eats. I think it's going to be wonderful to bring it to New Jersey. There's so many different restaurants I can think of that would be a really great fit of here, and I'm really excited to talk after the show and get some parents involved in New Jersey on this.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you again to everyone who listened in tonight. Make it an amazing week, and we'll be back with you next week on the same time.
This has been another great episode of Unlock the Code. Unlock the Code is a division of Hope Education Services, one of the world's leading companies where parents can learn about autism online. For even more great content, head over to hopeeducationservices.com today and join our list so we can send you our VIP content and you never miss anything that can help your child succeed. Love our podcast? We would love a 5-star rating on iTunes and Podomatic. Thank you for allowing us to help you unlock the code of autism. You are not on this journey alone. Together, we're going to make a great team.